Hello and welcome to episode 94 of Kaiju Curry House, the fortnightly show that gives you a healthy dose of kaiju goodness every other Monday. I'm joined today by Smokey Joe, Alex, and
Hey!
I'm very pleased to say that we have Steve Wilson, writer, producer, director, the man behind Tremors. You'll have seen S.S. Wilson appear at the start of all the Tremors films, and here is the man. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Before we start the podcast, I do want to thank you on behalf of my wife and all the fans for my childhood, her childhood, because you not only did Tremors, but before that, you wrote Short Circuit, which is an amazing film. You're involved in Batteries Not Included, which is one of my wife's favourite childhood films. And I believe you were a story consultant on The Land Before Time, which still makes me cry today.
That makes everybody cry today.
We worked very closely with Steven Spielberg and George Lucas.
Wow.
And it made fairly significant changes to that script. It was forging ahead. It was already in production, and not to derail us, and there's another topic, but it is a fun story that I haven't told very much.
Oh, go for
it. It was, the storyboards were done. I mean, really all you could do is change dialogue at this point. But Stephen had this unbelievable ability to recognize when he had an issue and he just didn't feel right about certain things in the movie. And he warned us up front. He said, look, I'm not going to take credit from the original writers. You guys aren't going to get credit. Forget it. But we were working at Amblin. We had offices at Amblin, so we were kind of involved in everything. We were in Amazing Stories pitches. We were running up and down the hall with Matthew Robbins working on Batteries Not Included. And somewhere along the line, Stephen said, "Hey, you got to look at this dinosaur picture," because it was, everybody worked on everything during that period at Amblin. It was a wonderful, wonderful time to be there. And I will take credit for one thing. Brent and I changed the theme of the movie, and it eventually became the theme song. Not that we did, a huge amount of other work on the movie, but we did have one significant impact, such that Stephen finally squeezed if you look at all the crawl of the credits, somewhere down in there, Stephen and Brent have a little thank you of some sort. So yes, we did work on Land Before Time. And in fact, Brent is very much Ducky Yup Yup Yup. That's Brent.
If he listens to this podcast, I'm sure he will love hearing that.
Yeah.
Your colleague was the voice of Ducky?
No. He wrote the dialogue.
Okay, I see. Oh,
he came up with the idea of Ducky repeating himself all the time.
That's good.
Oh. Right, I'll steer us back to Kaiju. And
what were we talking about?
You don't have to do that, Paul. It's fine. No,
I know we like to go down rabbit holes, but Alex, I haven't spoken to you for a while, so tell me, what have Kaiju been up to?
Well, thank you for asking, Paul. Did I ever actually properly show you my Hedera figure from CCP? Did I show you it?
No, I don't think we did it properly.
Well, here it is in all its glory. So a little bit of backlog, Steve. I decided to invest, for reasons, a rather large sum of money for this utterly glorious... there you go. You want it, don't you, Joe?
That's very...
Look at that. So that is a Galaxy sort of like iridescent kind of reimagining of a monster from 1971 from Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, also known as Godzilla versus Hedorah. And there it is. It came with the smokestack. It's glorious. And, there needs to be some yin and yang in this. There has to be some balance, because in order to kind of purchase this, I decided to sell off one of my X Plus figures. So it's been a heavy moment this week when I parted way with one of my X Plus figures that's gone over to Canada. So that was a very tragic moment. Also, Paul, you'll be pleased to know I plugged in my PS4. I've done that. Now, the reason for that is not for games. It's so that I can now access my rather extensive Blu-ray library. So I'm now rewatching many things. However, I tried rewatching Godzilla King of the Monsters. It didn't go so well. And
you didn't like that film to begin with, to be fair.
I know I didn't like that film to begin with, but I sat down, and the reason why it happened, gentlemen, is because one of my daughters, she said to me, Daddy Bear, I would love it if you could play me one of your Godzilla movies. And that's an invitation.
So you
There
chose
it
the only
is.
one with the F-bomb in it.
So I chose the only one with the F-bomb in it. Yeah. Thank you, Joe. Yeah.
Parenting.
Parenting. Yeah. So, and what happened was, when people say to you, what's your favorite band, or what's your favorite film, and you kind of stumble and you go S Club 7, and then people go, what? Well, that's kind of what happened. So my daughter said to me, play me a Godzilla movie. Which one is it? And I went, it's Godzilla King of the Monsters. And then I put it on, and I'm like, why have I picked this? I don't like this film, and I'm not sure she will. And we got about 30 minutes in, and actually the kids were enjoying it more than we were. But then, unfortunately, after about an hour, just the vibe was wrong. So at another time, not when we have our good friend Steve here, I need kind of, Joe, Paul, your support in picking out kind of like a list of films. Maybe this could be an episode idea of what films from the kaiju genre should I play to introduce people who are kind of on the fence. That's kind of my thing. But
yes, we have been discussing the indoctrination episode for a while now.
The indoctrination episode needs to happen because my children are ready. They're this close. But Godzilla King of the Monsters was not the film. Joe, what have Kaiju been up to?
Right. So quite serendipitously, to Steve's invitation and willingness to come on the podcast, our 10-year-old has discovered Tremors. And he is devouring Tremors, and he loves it. And it's quite funny because when he runs across a field now, he kind of like looks around. It's great. Other things that I've been doing, I got a 3D printer, and I've been playing around with various things, and it's proving to be quite fun. I'm learning a bit of ZBrush as I go, so hopefully I can start making my own monsters and stuff, which will be fun. But I've been doing a bit of that, and I've also been slowly but surely collecting all of the bits of merchandise that are currently at our web shop. So I've been wearing my hat and my t-shirts around town, and it's been cool to have my Kaiju Curry House merch represented, in public. It's nice. So that's kind of what I've been up to. But yeah. So Steve, what have Kaiju been up to?
Well, all of us at Stampede continue to try to forge ahead in one form or another. Ron Underwood continues to direct TV shows almost nonstop. And Brent and I continue to try to sell screenplays, although we haven't been successful lately. We have one out there that is in the running still. I have written a number of short stories and books. I have a new book coming out this year, and I do a lot of podcasts, as it turns out.
So do we.
Maybe, Steve, towards the end of the episode, you could recommend some podcasts to us that our listeners could check out as well. Anything
I
that
could
you've enjoyed.
remember what I had done.
You did say before we start recording that you're trying to pitch a monster movie at the moment, aren't you? Can you tell us more about that, or is that a bit top secret?
Well, it is and it isn't. The hook, the idea came from Alec Gillis of Amalgamated Dynamics, who did the monsters for Tremors. And Alex said, we haven't actually done a feature together in all these years. Why don't you guys write something, and let's try to make it. And so Brent and I we took that impetus and said, let's just write a monster movie, come up with a monster movie. And we had an old idea that was, sitting on the shelf, as we tend to do. And we said, this one's fairly low budget. Maybe we could even do this Kickstarter. Well, as our partner Nancy Roberts, who is also still part of Stampede, said, you guys have never written a low budget movie, and I don't think you ever will. And indeed, when we went back with the script to Alec, and he said, yeah, we can't do this Kickstarter. But the good news is it did find its way to a pretty high level producer in Hollywood, and he likes it, and he is trying to figure out what the best place for it might be. We're waiting for him to pull the trigger and hopefully sell it. but it's a monster movie not in the Tremors vein exactly. It's another twist on a different genre. This is what Brent and I tend to want to do. We tend to try to take some existing trope and bend it a little bit, and that's so fingers crossed.
Yeah,
maybe
we'll
that'll
keep our
make
fingers
it.
crossed. Absolutely.
That'll be cool to see.
Yeah, we'd love to do it because it would be the whole team. It would be, it'd be Nancy producing, Alec and ADI doing the monsters, Ron directing, Brent and Steve writing. So that's the hook.
The gang back together.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Right.
Paul.
Who wants to ask me?
The-
What have
well-
Kaiju been up to? What you been doing?
Go on, Paul. Tell us, what games have you been playing that don't include kaiju?
I got a can of Godzilla Cola.
Where did you find that?
Have you seen it? So it's Funko.
Okay.
Like the Funko Pops. So
Yeah.
you get a can, and inside it is a little kind of squished Godzilla.
Huh.
And they're only about £10. So for kids, it's like a blind bag. You don't know if you're going to get a normal one or a special glow in the dark one. I saw it and I thought, for that price, I'll give it a try. I'm going to
Quite
give
cool.
it. I'm going to give it to my son. To be honest,
I'm gonna
Yeah,
introduce my kids to 10-pound blind bags. I have enough trouble with the 1 and 2 pound ones.
you can get them for £1.
I love how.
Oh yeah, the My Little Pony
Speaks them-
miniatures.
Speaks the man who collects Magic the Gathering. I'm not going to introduce my children to blind bag purchasing.
Oh, I haven't introduced
Oh,
them
no.
to cardboard crack yet. Kids, don't look up what crack is.
Kids
Ask
don't
your
look at what
parents.
Magic the Gathering is.
Yeah, don't look up Magic the Gathering.
Don't look
No,
at Magic the
don't.
Gathering.
Don't.
Don't do it.
And I've been reading the Godzilla versus Power Rangers.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's I know we had the artist on the podcast, and he said that other Toho characters would be in it, and I just didn't realize, I guess, the extent that they would be in it. So I won't give any spoilers, but it's really, issue 1 is really good. So
Are there any Titanosaurus spoilers?
nothing Titanosaurus yet. I mean, he did
Dang
say,
it.
to be fair, that he
Dang
wouldn't be
it.
in there. Sorry, Joe. But yes, no, I haven't been playing anything. I've just been reading and playing with a plastic toy. No gaming. So, Kaiju conversations. Joe, have you had any conversations to get us started?
I have actually. So I have been corresponding with Alan Maxon, who.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so folks may know him as one of the heads of King Ghidorah or Rodan,
The right head.
amongst many of the other wonderful roles that he has chosen. He is currently working on Alien Planet, which will be awesome. He actually had a question for you, Steve. He said, have your opinions of any of the Tremors films changed from when you made them to now? And why do you think that is?
Well, that's an interesting question. And my opinion of the film's changed.
Like any specific movie that was kind of like his angle.
guess the only movie that I look back on and think we went a little too far with comedy was Tremors 3, Back to Perfection. At the time, we thought we were doing exactly the same tone as we had done in Tremors 1 and 2. When I look at the movie now, it seems a little broader. Then Brent and I are very finicky about this stuff. I don't know if it plays that way to the average person. But that's other than that, of the 4 movies we did, I like them all.
You did kill Miguel in that movie.
Well, that was a deliberate choice. We thought we needed
that wasn't cool.
We needed
dude.
it.
Wasn't cool.
We felt like we needed a strong emotional thing to happen, and Tony
wasn't
Tony
cool.
was all.
I find out that I mean, like, you've already got me thinking: is this guy responsible for Littlefoot's mom? Now and then there was Miguel. Like, what is it? What's going on here? But no, I remember that. I'm like, not Miguel.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion about it, and we thought, all right, we're going to do it.
There we go. It is kind of funny that film also had the ass blasters in it. I mentioned earlier, that our 10-year-old has discovered Tremors, and he went to school and talked about ass blasters. And my partner and I were, because he told us that he was doing this, and we were expecting a call that entire evening. Charlie's been in school talking about ass blasters. Kids, don't look this up on the internet. Anyways, and we were just like, I wonder if the parents are going to have the context that this was a monster related thing or something completely different. Luckily, though, it was all monsters and stuff like that. But it was a very funny parenting moment. It was like, oh, we didn't screen that, I don't think. Yay, Tremors!
I will volunteer also. We did not anticipate that Tremors, in particular, would become a family movie. When Fred and Kevin came on board, they said, we're going to talk like cowboys all the way through this thing. And there was a lot more swearing in the movie. It's obvious, and there's some places where we had to overdub it, and we get made fun of for that. But we knew by the time we did Tremors 3 that they were more family oriented, and we argued again about that word. I got to tell one other funny story. I did get an email, very distraught, some years after that movie came out, from a very religious person who had software or some kind of device that he could plug into between his DVD player and his television that would automatically bleep objectionable words. But it didn't know the word ass blaster and would not delete it. So he asked if there was anything I could do about that. I'm afraid
you can't cheat the system, man. A name's a name. Oh, that's great. I will reserve the remainder of my questions because I have a special guest questioner coming later. But you fellas, Paul, I know that you've got some, Paul, floating around in there.
Well, we had because I posted it to the group, and so we've had a few questions come in. So Brandon wanted to know what the inspiration was for the graboid.
The graboid, the original Tremors underground monster, came out of a hike I was on. I'll back up. I'll tell the whole story. I've told it before, but here's the whole story. One of my very first jobs was working as an editor on an enormous Navy base, which was in the middle of a desert, in the Mojave Desert. It's called the Naval Weapons Center, and they made films out there, and I got a job as an editor editing the films. On the weekends, you were free to wander around the places that they were normally shooting at during the week. And I was climbing around on boulders. This base is very near Lone Pine, where we shot the movie, and it has boulders out in the sand, just like the ones in the Alabama hills around Lone Pine. And I was climbing on these rocks, and it struck me, gee, wouldn't it be weird if there was something in the sand and I was trapped on this rock? And I wrote that down. And I wish I could find that note too. I never have been able to find it. I used to keep everything. So many, many years later, we've sold Short Circuit. We're producing movies. I mean, we're writing movies, and everything. And we were a little frustrated that we didn't have the control we had originally had over the short movies that we did prior to our Hollywood career. And our agent said, well, you're not talking about writing. The writers have no control. They don't get to say anything. And you want to produce. So find something that you want to write on spec, and we'll try to sell it and attach you guys as producers. So that's why Tremors got written. So we went back and dug out our files, and one of them was Thing Under the Sand, and you can't get off the rock. And our agent, Nancy Roberts, said, oh, I like that. Sand shark, land shark. And then almost immediately, Saturday Night Live started doing Land Shark, so that title was dead. And but that is the long, rambling answer. The movie grew out of that moment of hiking out in the Mojave Desert.
One more question before we break up for our first section. I have a question from the group, from Tom Tyler, who's one of our devoted fans. He says to you, Steve, how did the idea of Tremors come to yourself? What sparked your imagination to come up with the story? And also, how did you feel about casting the movie? Did you get a say in who was cast for the roles? Lots of questions there.
Yeah, I think we've covered.
Well, we did. Well, hopefully I've answered the first part of the question, where the idea came from. Yes, the whole point of doing Tremors was to have much more creative control. and to bring our friend Ron Underwood, who was originally slated to, we hoped would direct Short Circuit, because we did not realize it would sell. Short Circuit sold at a very high level, much to our surprise. We were suddenly on the front page of Variety. And Ron, at the time, said to us, there's no way they're going to let me direct this movie. And we said, but Ron, we wrote it to do it together. And because we had been doing short films with Ron Underwood for years. That's another story. But Ron was much smarter about business than we were. And indeed, of course, no one would consider him. And almost immediately, John Badham, a very big name director, was brought on. So we'd always felt bad that there we were. We suddenly sold Short Circuit, and Ron wasn't going to do it. And we also had no creative control over it. John Badham, who was not mean to us in any way, just went off and made the movie. We literally did not know he had left town. And so when we were doing Tremors, the whole point was to work directly with Ron. In fact, we drove him crazy. We were much too close to him on the set and bugging him all the time. And to the point where it annoyed Michael Gross at one point, because he would say a line and then we would run over and whisper to Ron. And finally, Michael walked off the set and came, can we all be part of this conversation, please? Because we were very involved. So we got very involved in casting. We were in all of the casting sessions for all of the major characters. And we all voted with Ron on who was ultimately selected. And we were just extraordinarily fortunate, to get the cast that we did. Getting Kevin was the make or break. The studio, we had to have some level of a star, or they weren't going to make the movie. And they sent Ron off to lunch with Kevin. We all held our breath, because if Kevin said no, we were dead. But once Kevin said yes, then Fred Ward came aboard, and then of course, then the studio began pushing us. We want to shore up the movie with talent that helps the marketing. What about Michael Gross? This is what studios think. What about the father from Family Ties? Really? But they go, but he's a big TV star. What's your problem? And Michael thought we were bringing him in because he had just played a villainous character in another movie. And we had not seen that movie. All we knew was Family Ties. But anyway, he came in and just absolutely nailed the character. Burt Ron, to this day, talks about Michael's audition for Burt, or reading or tryout for Burt. And then, the same thing happened with Reba. Hey, what about this big music star? She's never acted, but so what? And we said, well, we'll read her. She has to be good. Well, Reba came in, completely blew us away. And then we found
she's very natural. I've started her up, but she was very natural in all of her lines.
It was extraordinary good fortune. Extraordinary good fortune that she was such a natural. I vividly remember her first line that we in the course of shooting the movie. Her first line was "Stinks too." Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I think that's where they have the tentacle under the truck, isn't it?
That is correct.
Yeah.
And we were, and she was very excited that day.
Good memory.
So yeah, to ramblingly answer the question, yeah, we were very involved in casting. We were very involved in the entire production. That's the whole point. And in fact, later Ron roped me into doing second unit, which I had not considered. But then I totally got into it and loved it. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for answering so many of those questions. We're going to take our first break now. When we return, I'm going to try not to ask a million questions about Short Circuit because I'm very excited about that. And I know that Paul will have many of his questions as a huge fan. Thank you. And welcome back to the second part of episode 94 of Kaiju Curry House. We are joined by the fantastic Mr. Steve Wilson, who is a screenwriter for many of your favorite 80s classics, such as Short Circuit and Batteries Not Included, along with, of course, Paul's absolute favorite series, Tremors. Paul, I'm sure you have many more questions for our guest. Fire away.
Sure, I have so many questions. I don't want to geek out and just take all the time, but I'll certainly ask a few.
Paul, this is your moment. This is your moment. Have at it.
Oh, Steve, I'm sorry. So you did Tremors 1990, and then 6 years later, because Tremors got quite a cult following, didn't it? And then I guess you were approached to write a sequel, or did you have a sequel in mind when you made Tremors originally?
We did not. And of course, Tremors, it's funny, you do see websites saying that Tremors was a flop. It was not a flop. It made its money back, but it was not the hit that the studio thought it would be. And as a result, we moved on. We started doing other things, and we didn't really think much about it. The video revolution was just getting going, and the momentum started to build. People began to find the movie on video, and it was the home video division of Universal who called us up and said, we need another Tremors. And we said, really? They said, yeah. This compliment would come to haunt me later, but one of the marketing people said, we could sell an empty box called Tremors. I didn't know that they would eventually try that, but we didn't have an idea, and we hadn't really, it was a one-off as far as we were concerned. And once again, oddly enough, by then I was living in Flagstaff, Arizona, and commuting back and forth to Hollywood in sort of a strange period of my life. And I would drive vast distances across the desert. And when one of those drives, I kept thinking, we had one cardinal rule: no matter what we did with Tremors 2, there would be no Queen Graboid.
Okay.
This was the first thing we said. No matter what, there will be no Queen Graboid. And so I kept thinking, well, of course, if you don't do that, what do you do? What do you do? How do you up the ante? How do you change it? And I thought, what if they fragmented into tiny Graboids? That was my first idea. And I called, Brent and Nancy and Ron, and I said, tiny monsters. And they said, really? And I said, no, but if there's a lot of them and they're really nasty, it could be scary. Think of Charlton Heston in The Naked Jungle, and that sort of thing. So then we began working on that. And Brent and I sat down, we worked out the story, and we tried to make, as we always do, we tried to make everything fit and be consistent with the first movie. And then we begged Kevin to be in it, but he didn't want to do it. And but I guess that's the answer to the question. If indeed I was responding to a question.
Yes, you did. Yeah, because I suppose I obviously just enjoyed the films, didn't think too much about it. But thinking back, if you were to do something different, but in the same vein, it would be on the ground or in the air, but still blinded by sound. So like echolocation, like a bat or something. But you went for heat sensor. Was that, how did that come about? Were you just
again out of the desire to change things up?
Okay.
And we're always looking to put the situations, especially poor Bert, where put the character sort of behind the eight ball. We knew that what worked in Tremors, part of what worked in Tremors was the people are cut off and they're scrambling to solve this problem on their own. They've just got themselves to figure out what the heck is going on here. And we thought, it'll be funny if they assume the monsters are big and they're not. It'll be funny if they assume that they're attracted by sound and they're not. That was literally where that came from. Is it, well, what do we just change what they react to? The Shriekers, what they react to, the goblins. So
I love it. It's become canon now.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna use it.
You'll have to tell him that.
Oh yeah.
I have a question.
Go on.
No. Joe, please, Joe.
That was a Canadian standoff there. So I have a question because I love large, dangerous, scaly things. And the Graboids are from a period of Earth's history, according to canon, that predates the dinosaurs. So in theory, at some point, dinosaurs and Graboids would have met each other. And I was just thinking, is there ever a world, was there ever an idea tossed around that we could have shown or seen those two interacting?
See, that's no, and that's a great idea.
I
particularly in the questions I answer about the series, I'm fascinated at how the fans are able to just take our material and shoot off in all these different directions. Yes, the Graboid dinosaur movie, absolutely. Wish I'd thought of it.
Oh yeah, and it's set during that time period, but it's the aliens are the people figuring it out, you know? I mean, like, because of course there were aliens that came to the planet. So
Yeah, you'd want to know who was there enjoying or facing that problem. But yeah, it's
and you could even write in,
because they would have been coexistent, absolutely. And the graboids survived the asteroid because they were underground anyway. So
oh no. You see, this is the plot twist here. The aliens don't like the graboids or the dinosaurs, so they're leaving Earth. It's just like, we should nuke it from orbit just to be safe.
You should read one of my short stories.
I would happily read them.
Yeah,
Huh?
please.
There's a short story on Amazon called Reprieve. It takes off from that idea that you just proposed.
Oh, awesome. I will totally give that a read then. We've got Cowboys and Monsters. We've got the Reprieve. You've got all sorts of goodies for me now. Sorry, Alex, you had a question.
No, it's okay. Yeah, Steve, what films growing up were most influential for your screenwriting? What did you watch or read that kind of made you go, wow, my ideas are flowing?
They're classic, or they're classic to me. Of course, I'm much older than everybody. The very first movie I saw, to my knowledge, was Ray Harryhausen's The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. I was 5 years old when that movie came out, and two of my favorite things in the world were roller coasters and dinosaurs. To have a dinosaur eat a roller coaster, it just did not get any better. And it put me on a path to figure out what animation was. You know, thankfully, I had an uncle who was a movie projectionist in a little theater in Oklahoma, and he also was making home movies and sophisticated enough that he was doing animated titles for his home movies. This is way back when. And he taught me what animation was and how it worked. And then somewhere along the line, I read that Ray Harryhausen, that's what he was doing. It was animation. That's why his monsters were so much cooler than lizards with, scales with the horns glued on them. And but I stayed with it. I always liked fantasy. To this day, if I turn on HBO and somebody says, I've never seen that before, I'll stop, and if they say I'm your mother, then I change the channel. But so then I went to a very influential the George Powell pictures, War of the Worlds, completely blew me away. Forbidden Planet really blew me away. And even as a kid, I didn't get until later how pure science fiction Forbidden Planet is. I mean, so all of this stuff impacted me, along with Westerns and Davy Crockett and things like that. And thankfully, my father, was very supportive of me being in film, to the extent of changing when I went to college, coming to my college and throwing out my pre-psych classes and saying, this is crazy. You've been making movies since you were 10, you need to be in the movie department of this college. This is how clueless I was.
Oh, thank you for sharing all your inspiration there. Just expanding on that question, since kind of Tremors, what films with monsters have you enjoyed the most, where you've kind of watched and thought, this is great, this is still exciting?
Oh gosh, well, Alien and Aliens, Jim Cameron's reinterpretation of it. I love those. Jaws, I loved, of course. I was actually in a classroom or in an auditorium in USC, where I did graduate film school, when Steven Spielberg brought his first movie, Goldie Hawn. Can't think of the name of it. And then of course the audience is jumping up and down, and we all loved it, the Goldie Hawn picture. And said, what are you doing next? And he said, believe it or not, I'm doing a movie about a giant shark. It's called Jaws. And we were all kind of very hip and snooty students. We were all art-minded. We did not think of ourselves as mainstream Hollywood. And the whole place kind of went, what? Little did we know. And by the way, Jaws is a wonderful movie. I rewatch it frequently because it's just amazingly well done. So Jaws, and then much more frequently, one of the things that just absolutely impressed me the most, is not a monster movie, but is Jordan Peele's Get Out.
Get Out.
In terms of a movie, in terms of movie that is just so well crafted.
Yes.
Every aspect of it is so, and genuine surprises in a time when it's much harder to surprise your audience.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the later canon.
Well, thank you so much for that, Steve. Yeah, that's great.
So I have a question, because we're going to have to do the indoctrination episode. We need some, recommendations here.
I'm curious about that one too.
Yeah, if people are going to get into monster films, what would be your top 3 to throw at them to like get them into the creature feature, as it were?
I would recommend them. I guess people would, look askance at the giant mechanical ants, but they're giant mechanical ants, man. Them is a
it's
wonderful,
like it's a bird, it's a plane, it's an ant. It wasn't it like it's like you wouldn't believe this, but it was a flying ant. I remember like listening to that when I was watching that. It was just like, why is that so strange? Like
it's a really solid detective movie, and everybody's playing it dead straight. Thing from another world. Partly because it's just non-stop. I'm talking about the first one. The black and white one, this non-stop rapid fire dialogue. That script is actually way longer than a script should be, because people talk so fast. Anyway, those are much older pictures. If you're talking about more recent stuff, it's harder for me to draw on. I've been mentally riffing on what Godzilla, but I have to admit, in the kaiju universe, I'm not up on the many later permutations of Godzilla. I saw the real, what I consider the real Godzilla again as a kid. My dad probably took me, and again was blown away. The sheer scale of Godzilla was what blew me away as a kid.
Yes.
His toenail going across railroad tracks, it's just, you couldn't get better.
I think it's always tricky to kind of convey your love of something to another person when the genre is so vast, though. It's kind of like explaining.
It is vast, yes.
Explain to my family or friends, I like Godzilla, and they go, all right. And then they're a bit kind of puzzled. And then they say, oh, I think I've seen one of those films. Yeah, one of. There's so many. And it's like, well, what's the general tone of it? Well, it depends. It's so massive.
Yes.
And that's kind of the challenge of it. It's like, oh, are they all like this? No, actually, they vary so much.
Yeah, they began to lose me when they started drifting towards slapstick comedy. And bug eyes and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that Alex loves, by the way.
I wasn't going to say that. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, there we go.
So, are you still being approached for Tremors ideas, or is it kind of done and dusted now?
No, we've committed the cardinal rule of getting old in Hollywood. The phone does not ring. The only way that we generate any interest is the way we have been. We create material and then try to get it out to people. But we were told this at the beginning of our careers, and it's true. There is a point at which all the executives are younger. They remember vaguely Short Circuit when they were kids. Oh, is that guy still alive? And so no, they don't approach us. They don't approach us to rewrite anything. There's lots of things I would love to have rewritten. I could have fixed it, but
is it because since
but
Tremors
it's entirely
2,
up to us to generate our own interest right now.
I'll say since Tremors 2, I really want to see Grady and Earl's Monster World, and I was just hoping that one day we might see a spin-off of some sort, but I guess not.
Especially when we thought our series might go another year, we were throwing around all kinds of ideas like that. Yes, it would have been.
You really? I'd love to hear. What would you have had in a second season of Tremors? Was there what story beats would you have hit?
Well, there was the endless stream of monsters, and that was a little bit of a problem. Of course, it was a little bit hard. We knew going in it was going to be a problem, and it was. That's why we came up with the concept of Mixmaster, the DNA scrambling material, to sort of help us with that inherently comedic idea that this one little town keeps running into a new monster every week. But on the other front, we were doing what you must do with a TV series, which is you must, expand and enrich the lives of all of your characters. The one story that I really wanted to pursue was that Rosalita is not really related to Miguel and is running some kind of scam. But we didn't get beyond that idea. We would have fleshed it out. And then the town has to decide, well, do we still accept her? I mean, she's a solid citizen, but she kind of scammed her way into owning Miguel's ranch, was one idea that we wanted to spring on the audience.
Wow.
So I feel like there was a missed opportunity here. Brady and Earl's Worm World. So you are the guy that was writing this and coming up with the ideas. Can you spoil it here for us a little bit? Just tell us what this theme park would have had. Was there a shrieker petting zoo? I mean, like what was around here?
You're already getting ahead of us, as the fans tend to do. We liked the idea. We threw out the idea, and then I think we referenced it in Tremors 3 then. But we didn't spend a lot of time imagining what it was, other than lines of dialogues that relate to it. I've always sort of felt like it was cheesy, though. That neither Grady nor Earl were the kind of businessmen to be able to make it really fly. Yeah. That's our feeling, So it's, the Graboids are kind of sad and droopy, and
Yes. Tremors regularly has veins of cheese in it, doesn't it? Like there are elements, and I think that that's one of the huge appeal factors of it. It's that it's a show that walks that very clever line of being quite silly at times, but not so silly that it kind of jumps the shark, that it becomes ridiculous. It still manages to take itself seriously enough that you go, okay, this is a coherent story. And it makes sense. It's a bit ridiculous at times, but it kind of works. And I think that's why it's got such appeal. And you were saying earlier about kind of the fans getting away with themselves. I have to say, kind of as a consumer myself, the Tremors community is one of the nicest fan bases I've met online, because generally speaking, fan bases are horrible. They're a fire pit of society. And you think, why do these people exist? And I've been a member of various online Facebook Tremors groups for years. And they're really nice. That
is really nice to hear. I'm not aware of that in the way that you would be, and I'm very pleased to hear that. Yeah. Certainly, that's true of the questions I get from fans. That I'm actually way behind right now. I've got to get back to it. They still come, even though the Stampede offices closed years ago. The Stampede site is up. People still send me questions, and they're new questions.
Yeah.
Going to what you're saying, they don't ask me the same thing over and over. I swear they've read great. Every answer to every question, because whenever I open up my email to my fact page, I go, my God, it's a different question.
That's great. It shows some creativity as well from the community.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, believe me, I don't post all the pitches for new versions of Tremors, except to keep reminding them I don't own it. I don't have anything to do with it. I can't help you.
And here's the segue now, because in terms of a question that you might not have got before, Joe, you have a youngling who possibly has questions.
Yeah.
And the young kids always have the best questions.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. So we'll take a break and I will fetch him.
Hi, this is SS Wilson, and we're on Kaiju Curry House.
Thank you very
much. The name itself is amazing.
Thank you very much. And we have two special guests tonight, because we not only have the renowned screenwriter, Mr. Steve Wilson, we also have a youngling amongst us. Would you like to introduce yourself, young man? What's your name?
My name is Charlie.
Hello there, Charlie. And how old are you, young man?
10.
You're 10. Now, I understand that you have a question for our guest. Would you like to ask him now?
No.
You wouldn't? Are you sure?
Now, Charlie, when you're watching Tremors, what do you wonder about? Do you wonder anything about how we made the movie, or where the monsters came from? Anything like that?
Charlie, what is your favorite Tremors movie? It's tricky being put on the spot, isn't it?
Oh, he's on the spot.
Got 2.
You like 2?
2. Good choice.
And what do you like about Tremors 2?
When those shriekers came in, surprised me a bit.
Surprised you?
You weren't expecting them to be small, were you, Charlie?
No.
You were quite confused by that. You thought they'd get bigger.
So are the Shriekers your favorite monsters in the Tremors films?
Yeah. I kind of like the Grumbles. Is that what they're called?
The gun bottoms.
No, the Grumbles.
The Graboids?
Yeah, the Graboids.
Yeah, the Graboids.
Okay.
The Graboids are cool, aren't they?
Mm.
Well, do you have any more questions for our guest, Charlie?
No.
Well, I'm going to give you a virtual high five, Charlie. It is so cool to meet you. High five.
Mm.
There we go. Nice to meet you.
Yes, Charlie, this is SS Wilson. Nice to meet you. I'm glad you're enjoying Tremors. It's amazing to me to have a young person watching my movies when they've been around for so long.
Now we need to get like a round table. Paul, you need to bring your kids in next time.
Oh,
I'll
yeah,
bring mine. Yeah.
No, giant family episode.
Yeah, let's do it. Oh. Well, thank you so much. It's been really nice to meet you, Charlie. Do you think that Mr. Joe is able to sit back with us again? Do you want to give the chair back? Maybe not.
No.
Just gonna sit in for Joe now.
I love this. Joe. Now, Paul, how do you want to do this?
Yeah, so I think, Charlie, you've done a great job. I think you need to hand back to Daddy now, though.
No. No, not feeling it. What other questions do we have left?
I wanted to ask Steve if you had any involvement in the reboot with Kevin Bacon that was looking to happen, but then never did. I don't know if you were involved in that in any way.
Do you mean the series
series.
for which Kevin did a pilot?
Yes.
No, we were
You
not
weren't?
involved in that. We were aware of it, and we asked them if they wanted us to be involved, and they said no.
Oh, okay.
I'm very sorry to hear. Very disappointed.
That's
to hear that.
yeah, that is disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was a little disappointing, yes.
Oh. Well, I have a much more positive question. This comes from my other half. Christina's asking, with regards to Land Before Time, why do you think it was so successful, and why do you think it continues to be successful? Because it is a film that seems to have appeal to generation after generation.
I think it's because it speaks to very universal themes in a very positive way. It was part of what Brent and I, in our hubris, feel that we brought to it, which was that basic idea: a long neck never plays with a three horn.
Yeah.
I think that really resonates with people. And I will also give credit to Steven Spielberg, who's overseeing all this. He and George Lucas. We had a bitter fight with Steven over the death of Littlefoot's mother. Brent and I were appalled. We said, "This is terrible. You can't do this." And Steven said, "You know what? People," I'm paraphrasing. Steven doesn't talk like this. I always make him talk like a drill sergeant. But he says, audiences are too wimpy today. Back when Bambi's mother got killed, people were in the middle of World War II and they just moved on. And in retrospect, especially when you look at the vast number of sequels that were spawned and so forth, I think you have to give credit to him for going for the most emotional thing you could go for.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite frankly a gut-wrenching scene.
It is, yes.
I had not watched it really since being quite young, and then I watched it for the first time again, and my daughter was 6, and I watched it with her, and then I had that kind of parental perspective, and I was choked up when Littlefoot died, and then later on, a couple of scenes later, he's hearing her voice and he's looking in the leaves, and you know what? I know Spielberg can get a bit of a reputation for being sort of schmaltzy and sort of overly emotional, but I felt like he played it very, very well. It works beautifully, and it's a very simple story, isn't it? There's a landslide, and the plate tectonics, and the children are separated from their parents. They go looking for them. They have to work together. They find their parents. The end. And yet it's a really involved, invested story. And I think that it's certainly one that, on playing it for my kids, it's rare for children to sit quietly for a film for the duration, and they did. They were all like, they were all engrossed.
No, it's very effective. Yes, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, and yes, and it also plays. Spielberg had done a lot of, had literally had hired psychiatrists to advise them on some of this stuff, kids losing parents and things like that. And it was all part of the thinking that went into the script. And those things you talk about the children being riveted by it, and it's true, and it's partly because I think it's playing exactly to what a little kid does worry about. What if something happens to mom or dad? It's very powerful for a child to watch the little dinosaurs cut off from their families.
And it's got all of kind of the simple narratives of growth that work in children's stories, like, Petrie can't fly, and then over time he can fly, and like you think, okay, well that's very straightforward, but it's great. You do love that, and like you mentioned about sort of the script writing of Ducky, nope, yep, and don't step on the crack or you fall and break your back, and like I watch my own kids do that. Like they will argue on the way to school of no, you can't step on the crack, and it's like that is generational. That like then it's amazing. I think that for me that's why it speaks to children so well. But I was curious to kind of know your perspective. So thank you for answering that.
We're going to get Joe back on now.
We are indeed.
Steve, have you seen that some of the fan things that have come out of the Tremors franchise, like what you've inspired?
You mean like the fan fiction and so forth?
Anything. I mean,
we've seen a graboid thong. Okay, there's lots of stuff to be proud of.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that is most fun and or amazing is the number of people, given that Universal sort of never really promoted any sort of action figures or models, the number of people who have made graboids in just every conceivable form. I've seen full-scale graboids made of sand on the beach. There was a line of cupcakes with little graboids sticking out of them that somebody did somewhere.
That's an idea.
It absolutely
Graboid
is.
cupcakes. It is my birthday soon. I could ask for a graboid cake.
I saw a graboid wedding cake.
Oh wow!
Someone more hardcore than you, Paul.
The poor bride. The poor bride.
It could have been a bride's idea for you.
No, it wasn't, Paul. Don't delude yourself. It was.
That's amazing, though. That is amazing.
No, it's not.
But he managed to pull it off. What a blow!
Yeah.
What a man.
I mean, that's the one scenario where there was like a wedding cake and then there was the wife's cake instead of the groom's cake.
I'm going to have to see if I can find that on the internet. I'll have to Google it.
That's page 2 of Google.
I'm going to tell Dawn this. I'm engaged currently. I can try and pull this off.
Good.
I could do this. She's cool.
Well, with that in mind, if nothing else, Steve, we normally round off our episodes with recommendations for things that we encourage people to read, do, bake, in some cases a cake. And I think we'll start off with ourselves and kind of return to your good self. Paul, if nothing else, what are you thinking of recommending?
I think I should give the series another plug because not enough people have watched the series.
Yeah.
And I don't know if either of you two have seen it.
I have seen it. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel for ages.
Just repeat it.
I don't know where to find it now. Where is it available now to see?
It was finally released on DVD. I don't know how available the DVD was. I didn't think that was going to happen because somehow Universal just never does these things. And I believe the DVD that somebody sent me, the episodes are in the correct order because one of the horror stories of that series is that the Sci-Fi Network chose to show this episodes out of order. Among our many other trials that we had.
Yeah. So I don't think it got a UK release, the series, on DVD. But you can import. Yeah, you can import. I bought mine from eBay, and it was American DVD, but I've got a regional one player. You can buy the series digitally on Amazon. So I have. So yes, Amazon sells the series digitally. So I've got it digitally to watch, and then also the physical edition as well, because you know.
Charlie's birthday's coming up. Thank you for that, Paul.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
For myself, I would like to recommend a book by Jonathan Melville, who we had on as a guest a while back. The book is called Seeking Perfection, The Unofficial Guide to Tremors. Jonathan's a great guy. We had him on, really friendly, very knowledgeable about Tremors, but most importantly, a huge fan. Like his passion for particularly the first 4 films, he said, really shone through. So do check out our Tremors episode that we had, where we had Jonathan Melville on, and do please check out his book. It's available paperback for just £11, so it's very affordable.
I can second that recommendation. Jonathan is a wonderful guy. I actually met him in Edinburgh a couple of years ago.
Wonderful.
We had a great time after we did many online interviews prior to his publishing his book. But his book is the single most exhaustive Tremors reference you could possibly hope for. Because Jonathan did something that you spoke about. He talked to many people behind the scenes. He did not just talk to the creators or the actors. He did talk to the actors. He got to almost everybody, I think, except Fred Ward, who is very much a hermit. But hopefully I've said enough. But yes, do check out Jonathan's book. If you like Tremors, you have to read Jonathan Melville's Seeking Perfection.
There we go.
So I have 2 books which are kind of in keeping with creature design right now. So the first recommendation I'm going to make, because I love large, dangerous, scaly things, is the Paleo Artist's Handbook. It is by Mark P. Whitten, and it is an exhaustive commentary on depicting prehistoric life accurately. And it also explains the journey that paleo art has come along. So who got it right, who got it wrong, pitfalls to avoid. It's really nice as an artist handbook. It's also wonderfully illustrated too. I love that. The second thing, and possibly more topical for tonight's conversation, is The Fundamentals of Creature Design.
Oh, nice.
So this is a tome, and it is fantastic. It has 4 contributing authors, and it has a foreword by Ben Morrow. And I'm going to try and pronounce these authors' names correctly so that everybody can find it on Amazon. But it is Alex Rees, Bryn Mahaney, Andrew Baker, and Kate, I apologize in advance, Pefil Schnifter.
Nailed it. It was good.
I'm sorry, but it is gorgeously illustrated. It goes into real world biology. Some of the lovely things that are covered in another book I mentioned in our last podcast episode called All the Yesterdays about speculative paleo art are covered here, that animals are much weirder and more fabulous than mere fossils would lead us to speculate. So whatever creature that you do design, make it weird. That seems to be like the core fundamental of the book, which is absolutely fantastic. And I would say that anybody who dreamt up graboids would heartily endorse that way of thinking. But there's some lovely aliens, some lovely creatures, just varying types in this book, all sorts of ideas and recommendations on what to do. And between those two, you can create some fabulous life forms. So graboids, aliens, crazy dinosaurs, mutant monsters, like those are 2 fabulous books that can get you well on your way. And if you like art, there you go.
I've just put that on my wish list because that looks really, really cool. Thank you. Yeah.
It's hefty too.
It did look big.
They are both hefty, to be fair. I've had them both in my backpack the last few weeks, and it's a workout. It's good. This is one of the reasons why you do not get books on Kindle, Paul. The workout.
To work out.
Gains.
Anyways, yeah, those are my recommendations for tonight, and I think they're fabulous. But of course, check out any and all things Tremors, because you will not be disappointed. It's fabulous.
Steve,
yeah, you said you've got a lot of short stories and things. What could you recommend to us?
Oh, well, if I'm recommending my own stuff, which I will.
Oh yes.
I have 2 novels out. Tucker's Monster and Frady Cats. Frady Cats being the one about two cats who actually cause all the disasters in Frankenstein's laboratory without Frankenstein realizing what's gone wrong. And then I'm about to publish this year. I've said this before, and it's definitely going to happen this year. Frady Cats 2, in which the Frady Cats go on into the monster world and meet the mummy. And the cover for that book is being done by my partner Brent Maddock. I was struggling to come up with a cover and a design for it, and it suddenly hit me that my partner is an accomplished cartoonist. In fact, he's pursuing that as we pursue other things in our careers right now. And I thought, well, this is ridiculous. He should do it, and he did. So that'll be coming out soon. And then, of course, I can also, if we're talking Tremors, I have my series on YouTube called Tremors: The Lost Tapes, where I am slowly going through some 20 hours of video that my father shot during the production of the original Tremors.
No way.
He walked around the set with a video camera. I asked him to do this because I was so excited to be in control of my first real Hollywood movie. Control in the sense that I was co-producer with my partner. And Dad is not, a cinematographer. He walked around, doing this with the camera. And all those years ago, I looked at all the video and went, oh yeah, it's kind of fun. It's Dad's kind of home movies. So 30 years later, I got them all out again and began looking at them. And I thought, my God, there's nothing like this, especially for a movie that old. So there are now 22 episodes of Tremors: The Lost Tapes up on YouTube now. Behind the scenes, I like to say, like you've never seen it.
Yeah.
And let's see. And then there's my short stories that are all on Amazon. They're all sci-fi and fantasy and the stuff that I love. And then there's the Hope for movie with the whole team coming back together. But don't hold your breath. I'm getting more cynical as I get older. But thank you for the chance to pitch all my stuff.
It's been fascinating.
Thank you for
It's
coming
great.
on.
Yeah.
Fantastic content is always appreciated. There we go. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us. This has been another episode of Kaiju Curry House. And as always, keep it kaiju.
Did Joe just leave?
Joe
Where's your dad gone?
This could be one of the best outtakes ever. Say something, Paul.
I'm lost for words.
Has any of the 94 episodes of podcasting prepared for this moment, Paul?
No, it's completely new territory for me.
Editorial challenge now.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a drink of water. Try editing this, Paul. Good luck.